All right, welcome back. This is the Something Ventured podcast. I am Kent Lindstrom. I am your host. My guest today is Eric Lagier. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Thanks so much for doing this. So Eric is the managing partner at ByFounders. We'll talk about what that is, but he has done things, among other things, worked at companies you've heard of, like Skype, founded and sold his own company, Memo Lane, and is now not only working at a venture capital firm, but has built that venture capital firm with some other people. And bear with us, we're going to talk about the power of the Nordic startup community. So this is fantastic. So let's start. How did you make your way here to Silicon Valley from across the ocean, and like how did this all happen?
Yeah, I've actually made a few attempts to come over the ocean a few times. I was early when I was at business school, in Copenhagen Business School. I got the opportunity, first time they opened an exchange program with Boston University, and I was fortunate to get that for a year. And I still question myself, why didn't I just stay over here afterwards? But I came back to Denmark and I started the regular career like many others in management consultant and corporate strategy, and went that like old route. But I felt continuously an urge to create something, do something, make a difference. And I was very fortunate to be early on involved in all the activities around mobile internet, launching that in Denmark for when it was called WAP and GPRS. And then later on, heading up Oracle's activities in Europe for mobile, working with all the major operators and coming over here to Redwood Shores once a quarter. And eventually I got the fortune to meet with Janus and Niklas, the founders of Skype, and was so impressed about their vision and what they wanted to do. And it's not common for Nordic founders to really have global ambitions, and especially not at that time. But I was fortunate to, with my background in mobile, to get on board and head up their mobile effort and getting Skype out on mobile phones. And this is a time, basically, I was about to say ages before, but years before iPhone, and then suddenly just being able to create some really innovative technology that's really moving millions of users.
And what was it like meeting those guys at that time? I mean, were they a couple guys with like an idea, or did they have a growing product? Or, were there other people in Silicon Valley, every other guy on the block is like starting this and starting that. What was it? What were they like? Like, what was it like? Did you know it was them? Was it the technology? What was it?
It was back in 2004, and more started to chat about Skype or talk. There was like, wow, Skype is starting to eat all the operators' minutes and so on. And that was a space I came from, and I loved it. I was like excited about that, but I have no clue about startups. And I remember I went to London to meet with them, and seeing this like really rudimentary like office space, but basically making my way through. I came in a pinstripe striped suit, and I was like, I looked like a goof when I looked at all these cool startup folks that were sitting there. But I really liked their very humble approach to what they were building, and the fact was that they really struck a chord. And if anything has ever grown virally, that's Skype. And that really set a new definition of growth for internet startups. So it was just a conversation we had around the future of mobile, where basically I remember Niklas was clearly saying, we would have no chance of partnering with operators because they would all hate us. And I felt that there was an opportunity because there's always a prisoner's dilemma. And in a very competitive environment for mobile, we saw that there's always somebody that's struggling and wants to challenge the incumbent. And that's our opportunity to partner, and that's what we aimed at and succeeded with.
And what was it culturally like? People all over the world listen to this podcast, and I've kind of seen startup communities all over the world, and they're very different. Like, they have different approaches to how they raise money, what they do when they raise money, failure. Like, there's some places where failing is pretty bad, and whereas in Silicon Valley, you're like, on to the next one. What was it culturally like there when they started?
I think that you strike something very, very important here. One, Skype was really struggling to raise money.
Oh, wow.
Like it was really, not an easy thing at all. The investor community in Europe was very non-existing.
Yeah.
And it actually took Howard Hartenbaum from, at that time, DFJ to fly over and meet with Nicholas. And basically, he was the first investor from the US that stepped in. And then Index Ventures as well went in, and Mangrove early on. But otherwise, it was difficult. So it was not a given. It was not normal to raise capital in Europe, and it was very difficult for any startups. And I would love to come back to that, which is one of the driving forces for ByFounders. But then the culture as well. We have in Europe and in the Nordics a word that everybody knows: skadefryd, schadenfryd.
Yeah.
It's like laughing when people fail. Right. It's a word. Right. Yeah. We don't have a word for the opposite. It doesn't exist in our vocabulary. It doesn't exist anywhere, and it very much describes the culture where failure in the Nordics is really a massive stigma, and you don't take risk, and everybody will laugh when you're trying to say, hey, I can do something, I can make the whole world talk for free, right? People will be like, you're crazy, go back and...
Yeah, it's funny, I had James Courier on the podcast, founder of NFX Guild, and he was talking about the sort of the history of Silicon Valley, and he was talking about the very odd culture here where you sort of just pay things forward to other people.
Exactly.
You just want people to succeed, and it's pretty altruistic, but it's also kind of not, in that you realize this is big flywheel that if you're helping other people, then it comes back to you
exactly
in some weird way.
And it's been such a revelation to come to Silicon Valley, which I moved to Silicon Valley 8 years ago with my company and my family, and just coming from Denmark and from Nordic culture where we are very closed off and very seldom voluntarily help others.
Right.
And suddenly everybody was like, hey, Eric, great what you're doing. Let me introduce you to this guy. Let me help you with this.
Yeah.
And I met so many great people that were just there to help.
Yep.
And we could really learn a lot from that. And that's one of the key things that I'm bringing back with ByFounders into the Nordic culture of how we can pay it forward.
Right.
And the great thing is that there's now a generation of very experienced founders that really have that mentality of saying, I'm okay to pay it forward.
Yeah. So how did you get from there, you're working at Skype, and so many people say, I worked at a startup, and they worked at Skype. Then there's founding a startup, which is its own little bit of magic.
Yeah, no.
You started Ailene, right?
Yeah, I got so inspired from seeing what Janus and Nicholas did and how you could really build a company like this. I then joined another Danish unicorn now called Tradeshift, but basically where we're sitting in the basement, the three founders, Christian, Mikkel, and Geert, and then me. They wanted to have, some of the experience I have from Skype and how they could scale this company, and they were really just a piece of paper and an idea, but some really knowledgeable, experienced people. So we did that for only a short while because I got this urge within where I saw, more and more people were active on social media. They were on Facebook and then Instagram and Twitter and so on. They were posting and posting. Where does it all go? What if we could create a time machine for the web where you could easily see, search, and share all your greatest memories? And that led to me actually jumping ship and saying, hey, let me create my own startup. And it was the right time, 2010. Social media was red hot. There was Dave Morin that was doing Path as well. There was a lot of good energy in Silicon Valley. I went here to Silicon Valley, fortunate to get August Capital with Howard Hartenbaum again, they leaned in and invested, and we had a fantastic run for our money on building this platform. Obviously, we also saw when Facebook launched Facebook Timeline.
So, because Ailene, it was a product. It's such a, like, I don't even know if Facebook's doing it the right way now. It was a product where you could kind of go back and it would surface memories from like X years ago.
Exactly.
Like, hey, 5 years ago you were on vacation in Hawaii or something like that.
Exactly. Like,
and then Facebook did something.
Yeah, no, it was. I remember at F8 in 2012, where Mark Zuckerberg was up on the stage and presenting Facebook Timeline. I was my phone went crazy because everybody say, "Have you seen this keynote? That's your pitch." And I was like, "Yeah," and fortunately, again, there was a lot of great folks around in Silicon Valley that said, "This is a great opportunity, Eric, for you, and come on in and have a conversation." And at very large companies, we had these conversations around how they could leverage Memolane and the technology we built. And eventually, we were fortunate to sell it to HP, which again was a paid forward from Raj Kapoor, that's now the chief strategy officer at Lyft.
Yes.
Because he had sold his old company, Snapfish, to HP, and by just hanging out with him, he said, "Why don't you contact HP?" So again, there's this like fantastic energy and paying it forward in Silicon Valley that I've been able to leverage very much.
And Facebook basically, they copied it, right? They didn't simultaneously come up with the idea, did they? I mean, that's how things work.
I would probably say that it's like that they copied. That would probably be thinking too much of Memolane, but I think it was very much the right timing, and it would be an obvious that somebody needed also at Facebook. And Sam Lesson, who was running this, I had great conversation with him. We were even discussing how we could team up, because again, I think it's something that needed to happen. I think it's really a great feature that Facebook have created, and it creates engagement. It's like we saw with our Memolane and the remembering of these, like, here's what you did 5 years ago. It creates a lot of engagement and re-engagement.
But the Facebook version really, I mean, it's subsumed in, it's a way to generate you posting content, but you can't say like every day, show me what happened 5 years ago or anything like that.
No,
like, doesn't really.
They have the timeline, but it's more compared to all the other features that's available. It drowns in that spirit where Memolane was it all and center, where you basically could go in and search. Hey, Ken, where was we were together last time? Boom, it will show this, and this place, right? Yeah. And everything memories that was created around that.
Right. That's incredible. So you ended up probably not loving the huge company. Nothing wrong with the huge company, but I imagine a guy who's starting companies and working with Skype isn't particularly adept at the corporate politics.
It's like no, but I think it was important. We wanted to make sure we found a good home for Memolane, and I felt it was also. I wanted to have done more, but HP was also in itself in a transition period where they were splitting up in business and consumer side. And hence suddenly what we were doing, the attention on that was basically zero. And then after a year, I left. But I got the opportunity already then to, in my spare time, work with other great founders coming from the Nordics and help them basically venture into Silicon Valley.
Right.
And with that experience and continuously engaging with more and more of these Nordic companies, especially as I also engage with 500 startups as a mentor there, I saw that, like, what if we could do much more?
Right.
What, not just being an advisor or a good friend and paying it forward.
Right.
What if we could do something more? And with that started the idea of building ByFounders.
Because ByFounders, which is the fund that you've built, because the scene is set early on when you are at Skype. Nobody from the Nordic countries. We should talk about what those are too, because by the way, everyone on the podcast, you think everyone knows, but they don't. But somebody swept in from Silicon Valley, and the money got made on Skype. Well. A lot of people, by a guy from Silicon Valley.
Let me run some stats for you, and maybe that's sets things in perspective, right? From 2000 to 2013, there was $11 billion unicorns created in Europe, 11 altogether in Europe. One of them was Skype, so one from the Nordics, right? From 13 to 18. We've seen $41 billion unicorns created in Europe.
Right.
So a 4x increase in 5 years, which is pretty good for Europe. But what's more interesting is that out of those 41, basically 8 or 9 of them are coming from the Nordics. So more than 20% of all unicorns in Europe is coming from the Nordics. And we are talking about companies like Zendesk, Unity, Sitecore, Tradeshift, Just Eat.
Right.
Right.
And so the Nordics are a group of, 5 countries in Northern Europe?
It's a group of 5 countries, and we include the Baltics. We see them as basically the new Nordic.
Okay.
So the Baltics, where we have TransferWise, we have Taxify, we have Pipedrive. We have Norway. We have Norway with Medallia. We have with Meltwater. We have Finland, where we have Rovio, Supercell. We have Sweden with Spotify, Klarna, iSettle, and we have Denmark. What's interesting, for example, if I just mentioned the 5 Danish unicorns, the Unity, the Zendesk, the Tradeshift, the Sitecore, and the Just Eat. Guess what? How many of them got money from any Nordic VCs?
How many of them?
0. None.
Really?
Right?
Right.
And against all odds, they made it, and they made it big. They got investments from like Zendesk, from Charles River Ventures, Unity from Sequoia. By the way, for example, right now, like 3 of Sequoia's best performing portfolio companies are from the Nordics. It's Klarna in Sweden, it's Medallia in Norway, and it's Unity in Denmark. And I think really, only now the Silicon Valley is starting to get their eyes open for the potential that's happening in the Nordics.
Right.
And this is where we are really wanting to make a difference, where we, with ByFounders, want to be there at the get-go, making sure that great founders, not against all odds, get funding and operational help and a bridge to Silicon Valley.
And is there a theory of the case here? What's going on? Why does a small percent of Europe have an out? I mean, there's a reason Silicon Valley has what it has and not the rest of the United States.
Yeah.
Mark Andreessen talks about all the things that make it, but what is it that's going on in the Nordic countries where there's this disproportionate set of European unicorns?
It is the biggest unicorn factory in the world per GDP. We are only 30 million people, and looking at the number of unicorns we're creating, it's really standing out.
Yeah.
But it's not been like that all the time, right? It's come really together over the last 10 years. And I think it comes back to a multiple of things. One is that a group of VCs, the North Zones and Creandum, were there early on and backing great companies, in particular Sweden, Spotify being one of them. Right. And instead of them normally would have left Stockholm, gone to London, and then gone to the US, they actually stayed. And having these energy centers, power centers, suddenly build up, it creates just a lot of attention and great resources that, the learning curve, they start to really be able to, I can see what Spotify is doing, I should do the same. And it's created just a really good, strong community, especially in Stockholm. Copenhagen is fast coming after that, Finland as well, and now Norway is really blossoming in Oslo.
Which is the Spotify one? The city?
Stockholm.
And that's the one where you can't get an apartment to save your life, right?
Yeah.
It's like San Francisco.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think in general, the evolution of the ecosystems is now really, we are starting to fast track or get up to pace with Silicon Valley. But then more importantly, the access to resources. I can get an engineer in Denmark or in Sweden for basically a third or a fourth of what it would cost here. Right. And the fact is, they are loyal. They really go in. They don't have this, changing habit of every year they need to go gold digging somewhere else. They go in with a passion and they help build these companies. So the loyalty around the engineers or anyone else you hire is much bigger, and you get them for a lower price. Right. And in general, the work-life balance is very, very different, right? Yeah. We have 6 weeks of vacation.
Yeah, wow.
Go figure. But we still produce great companies, and we have a great productivity outcome.
Yeah. And I've always thought about that mathematically, where people talk about how they work so many hours, 18 hours a day. But if you think about this mathematically, you say you work 10 hours a day, or you could work that, or you could maybe work 18 hours a day. So that's, say, 80% more. Mark Zuckerberg's not like 80% richer than everyone else. He's like a million times richer. So you can't work a million times more. So obviously it's something other than the hours. So you have an entrepreneur, you have a problem. People in the Nordics aren't funding the Nordics, and you have an idea, and you set out to build a venture fund. And this is an incredibly difficult, this is a hard thing. Starting companies is hard. This form of a company is also very hard in its own way.
Indeed. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's building a first fund is very, very difficult. I think we have had the advantage that I would never do it in Silicon Valley because it's such a crowded space, while really there's an opportunity in the Nordics. Given the growth of the tech community and number of startups that comes out, we felt that there was a demand in this early stage funding environment. Also because really we are very fortunate that our governments are very actively investing at the pre-seed stage, really giving grants to any founder to get off the ground. But once they're off the ground, or just a little bit up, who then goes in and helps them really take the next step at their seed stage? Right. And we felt that there was an opportunity there. And what we then did was, coming back to the whole story of paying it forward, we felt like the common denominator for all these last generation of startups that now are unicorns from the Nordics was that it was against all odds. What could we do to help this next generation? And we assembled a fantastic group of accomplished founders from across the Nordics, like Johan Brand from Kahoot, Niklas Stenström from Skype, Sten Tamkivi that did Teleport and was part of early at Skype as well, founders of Unity, Zendesk, Tradeshift, Vivino, Endomondo, there are so many great founders that all leaned in. And the big difference we did versus many other VC funds that have venture partners and pay all kinds of things to have them associated. No, we asked them, do you want to help the next generation of founders? Would you like to invest in this fund to do so? And they all said yes. And that was like a fantastic, commitment from all of them, saying they believe in our mission and what we want to accomplish, and they all leaned in. And going then to other LPs and saying, guess what? We have some of the most accomplished founders all believing in helping the next generation of founders through ByFounders. We can do this. That meant a big difference for the LPs, right? Because otherwise they would say, hey, what's your track record? Right. We have nothing. It's a first fund, but we believe we can show by the network we have that we can make a difference.
And what was the process as you raised this fund? It was you went out with in a sense like starting a company. It's a different pitch, but you went out with put together a little pitch, and you go to talk to people and talk to 1,000 people. What was it like? What was that like?
I think
you've raised your fund is €100 million fund. I think
that's right. Yeah,
that's a relatively large first fund.
It's a crazy large fund. It is, and in hindsight, maybe we should have settled for half, but
maybe not.
But we got momentum, and we were very fortunate. I think one of the biggest, help I got was very early on. I got to talk with Tommy Andersen, who's my partner in crime. Yeah. He's really stood firm through the many fires that we've had throughout the 1.5, 2 years that we had to raise this fund. And I think, again, as a startup, you would say it's always important to have a strong co-founder. And I found that in Tommy. So building the core team, and with Tommy, who's a seasoned entrepreneur himself, founder of Libertone, and really have been a tremendous support, because, it's not always easy. You get a lot of no's before you get a yes. But being two on the fort and really manning, and we complemented each other very well. Secondly, the strong backing of our ByFounders was, which we call the ByFounders Collective, was really just a good a vote of confidence to us. And then early on, we were also very lucky to have a good conversation with the Danish growth fund, Vækstfonden, which is basically almost, you could say, the sovereign fund of Denmark. and they have previously invested in a number of VC funds, including Boulderton in the UK and EQT Ventures in Sweden, and they liked what we were coming with. So very quickly we saw them as a wingman, where they helped us really make sure that our documents, our LPA, our PPM, and all these things, materials that we need to have like really in order. They helped us really make sure that we have top quality material by really kicking us and saying this can be better. So that was a really good tutor that we had in the Danish Growth Fund. And then from then on, really speaking with family offices, which one thing that combines us with family offices is the fact is they also themselves are entrepreneurs.
Right.
Either a first or second or third generation entrepreneur, but they do know that they also started against all odds. And how can we actually together help the next generation? So that was also some really great energy we had when we were talking with these family offices of having them come on board. And then as we built the momentum and we were showing how we started, we raised our initial first close at 30 million euros. And we showed the founders we invested in, like Jakob Junk, the former founder of Endomondo, who now is doing a fantastic company called Simple Feast, which I would highly recommend that you all look at. It's really basic.
Simple Feast?
Simple Feast, yes. Okay. It's changed the way, we live. Oh. We are very, very fortunate to have a chance to invest in a Simple Feast early on. A company like Cobalt, which is cybersecurity penetration testing as a service for Great Danes that came to Silicon Valley, went through Alchemist, and are now just killing it when it comes to cybersecurity and doing a fantastic job. So they could, our early investors could see what we're doing, and the prospective investors could see the portfolio that we were building at a very rapid pace because we have a unique access to deal flow in the Nordics.
So you kind of ruined the game then for guys like Sequoia, who knew the trick of going to the Nordics.
No, on the contrary, I think, and actually I was very fortunate to get in front of Roelof. I had really good
the managing partner at Sequoia.
Right.
I think so, yeah.
And exactly. And had a really good conversation with him. He's one of the smartest guy I ever met, and I could learn so much from him. But one thing, what we said is, we can help him bring more of the Unities and the Klarnas and the Medallias to him to basically be, a feeder fund for him. And that is the value add that we really want to do, because the true value we can bring as ByFounders is this bridge into a Silicon Valley, we bring founders with global ambitions. We help them get off the ground. We help them, make all their initial mistakes, because we are, ByFounders, this group, we are wingmen. We sit beside them and help them all the way. Right. But then what we're looking for is at Series A and beyond, really have the big funds to come in and spread their love and attention on these companies, because all else equal, we know that this give them a higher likelihood of succeeding. So we keep a very close connection with some of the great funds here, and we encourage other funds that haven't heard of ByFounders that are interested in getting access to great Nordic deal flow to just reach out to me.
Right. And how do you think the companies, or there are different models, how should the Nordic companies be connecting into Silicon Valley? Should they have their CEO here, put the team back there, or not their CEO here, but a BD guy? What's
5 years ago, everybody would say, hey, you need to move the whole company here to Silicon Valley, otherwise you won't succeed. But really what we are seeing as Silicon Valley is a bottleneck for resources and is super expensive. Companies like Zendesk, like Unity, like iSettle and Spotify and all the others, with really strong advantage, have a really strong advantage of having a strong development team, have a strong product team in the Nordics, and then have a commercial center in Silicon Valley. So business development, sales, and marketing are functions that really is great to have over here.
Right. So now you've shifted into you're investing in companies now. You've switched from begging with people for money, or not really. I mean, presenting your idea to people and raising a fund successfully, to looking at entrepreneurs and saying, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you looking for when you're sitting down with these engineers?"
Yeah, I think you. This is core to ByFounders and are really the vision of what we are doing, right? We don't want to be coined as yet another VC. We all come from a founder background. We've been there before, and we know how hard it is. You can say we have a formula which we call the 70s, which is the team, traction, total addressable market, technology, timing, trend, transformative, and 10x for us, right? That's the overall. But at the core of it, what we are looking for is what we talk about is passion, love, and the ugly slide.
Now, what is the ugly slide?
So the obviously, passion is we're looking for passion in founders. Yeah. We're looking for products that people love. But the ugly slide is really where I think and we hope we can make a difference. Because unfortunately, founders have gotten the perception through YC and 500 startups and others that are doing a great job. But when they pitch, it's like a sales pitch.
Yes.
And it's like all rosy and, hockey sticks and everything. But honestly, if people come to us to get money, they come the wrong place. If they come to us to actually get advice and help and have somebody to be their wingman, they come the right place. And we start the conversation of saying, please show us the ugly slide. And the ugly slide is, what is it that keeps you up at night? What is it, the challenge that you believe you have as a founder to make this a billion-dollar company, a global company? What are the things that you see, with competition or your founding team is not working out or anything? Right. This is your free get-out-of-jail card. This is where you open up everything. You just shared with us. Because at the end of the day, this type of truth and honesty and openness opens up for a very different conversation with the founders we have. And it basically eventually leads to this, where we tell them very clearly, if you just show us the pitch, in many cases, we will either believe you are lying or that you are ignorant of your own business.
Right.
Because you don't share what are the challenges on things that really may go wrong, which we as VCs always will be thinking of. So, and guess what? If there's one thing we never invest in, is founders that either are lying or are ignorant.
Right.
But by them opening up, it also opens up the conversation of how we can help them overcome the challenges. And if there's one thing we want to do is help and make sure that, okay, we can see this is an issue. How do you, get this to scale? How do you build this marketplace and so on? And guess what? Out of the 50 founders that's invested in our fund, there are many of them that already have done this, have proven this before. And it's such a powerful asset we have available. We can say, hey, founder for this company here, right, why don't you talk with the founder, Johan Brand from Kahoot, that did this, or you speak with David Hilkerson from Unity, or you speak with Morten Primdal from Zendesk, or you speak with Lars from Mobile Think, or you speak with, there are so many great founders out there, and they really want to pay it forward and help. So this ugly slide is really where we change the conversation with any type of founder we meet with.
Do people actually do a slide for you ever? Or that says, well, here's the problem, slide 9, AT&T might come in and do this.
No, it's we see, obviously we only started really talking about the ugly slide, a year ago. Yeah. And we can see if we're just part of one of these VCs that a founder pitched to, we get the regular thing. And we also see that they have done no research on who ByFounders is. Very simple. By just going on a website, reading our blog post, it would be very clear that this is something that we encourage them to do. But those who actually show up and do that, boom, they already have a door wide open for us. Because we always say our entire team is really focused on one thing: is we know that 99 out of 100 will say no. Right. But we want to make sure that any founder always leaves with much, much more than they came with. Mm-hmm. Always, because this is so important that we pay it forward to the next generation. And it might very well be that we don't invest, but we want to make sure that they leave with something they can use, and also obviously recommend us to other founders that they meet on their journey and saying, here's a VC that can provide them with a lot of good insight.
And can you tell, as you're meeting with them, let's sort of put this the right way, which ones are going to listen to you? And maybe it's not good that they listen to you all the time, but at least sort of when you're giving them advice, it's based on operator experience that is going to help them. Can you tell which ones are going to listen and go, okay, I'm going to chant, or be like, no, I'm going to do it this way, and you just sit there and go, oh, this guy's going to run the wall, and that's it? Like,
it's not always obvious. Yeah. And what we do as well is we hate when founders come in and say, hey, we are racing around, we're closing in a week, you want to participate. Yeah. It's not a good way to build a relationship that will last for 10 years. Right. What we really encourage is, even before they are thinking of raising money, they should come by our office. We should have a chat. What we also do is, as a good example, Sondre, which is the founder of SafetyWing, one of the founders of SafetyWing, together with Hans and Sarah from Norway, great company, basically building benefits for the digital nomads. And when we met with him first time in Palo Alto, I said, let's go out for a walk. And we walked around in Palo Alto for an hour. And I think that interaction, instead of where you're normally locked down to a table and a presentation and so on, you can open up much more. And that interaction shows, like, how will this, work over time? And already then I could feel that we would have a fantastic relationship with Sondre and his team, because they are on a mission. They are very driven on what they want to do, but they also acknowledge that it's early stage and there's many mistakes that can be made, and we can prevent them from doing those.
Right. This is such a great story. Like, such a fantastic. So what are you most excited about now for the future of ByFounders?
Wow.
I mean, aside from you're changing the way people are doing business in part of the world, or you're accelerating what's happening in part of the world, both for the investors and in your fund and the companies that you're supporting.
Yeah, I think what is fantastic with a fund, with a VC fund, this is not just, hey, the next 4 years or 10 years. Hopefully, this is a institution that is going to be here for many, many, many years, right. And where the culture and the foundation we built now will be, setting waves for many, many years. And right. What I hope is, with 50 founders coming together saying we want to help the next generation of founders, we can have more founders from the Nordics and Baltics to be successful, and at the end of the day, help further generations of founders. And where the fact is, any culture, any country, to survive, we need to innovate. And I think if we can help with a little sliver of our, experience and our capital to create countries to change and be much more innovative, that's what I would like to see that we can do as an impact.
What an incredible vision. So how do people interact? Like, how do people get in touch with you? Entrepreneurs who hear you talk and say, that's me. Like, that's my company. I need to talk to you. I put my ugly slide together. How do they reach you?
We encourage everyone to start by just seeing what we have on our website. We have the list of all our accomplished founders there. They can see who they are. They can read all about who we are, what we do, all our great portfolio companies. And if they want to reach me, they can email me at eric@byfounders.vc.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks.
All right. This has been the Something Fisher podcast. My guest has been Eric Lagier. See you next time.